How much damage has the meat industry been able to do to plant-based products that look so successful just a few years ago? Like beginning a new industry is always hard, but let's face it, the industry is fighting this tooth and nail. How bad is it?
I mean, I think you can't blame strictly the industry. I think that ignores just a lot of sort of broader social counter movements and what have you. But absolutely, I mean, there's a major report I can actually send it if you want to share it with your readers. The Changing Markets Foundation did a quite robust report on the meat industry's attempts to spread misinformation or disinformation, if you will, about plant-based products. I think that the the critique that stuck most is the critique that they're quote unquote ultra processed and unhealthy. I think that there was an alignment between a sort of cultural zeitgeist aiming for quote unquote more natural, less processed food in general, and then eyeing plant-based alternatives to this sort of category that's now being poo-pooed broadly. And so I think that that's been arguably the most successful critique, which actually, if you which is unfortunate for a number of reasons, right? First of all, it's unfortunate because, and I could talk about this at length, but I'll just give the short version. The category of ultra processed is an absolute nonsense category. We get into this in the book. It's a schema that is so hyper simplified as to be useless. The category of ultra processed quite simply means foods that are produced using ingredients you wouldn't find in an average kitchen or using extract or isolates from a given product. So that means that everything from an Oreo cookie to an Impossible Burger to baby formula are ultra processed. It completely ignores the individual nutritional properties of given foods.
Yeah,
Um,
can I just interrupt you for a
yeah,
second? Because I would just this is something I've been wondering. Like my understanding, which is kind of grabbed from the zeitgeist, not the result of research, is that ultra processed, the whole category was not developed in order to separate healthy from unhealthy. It was designed to do something else, and so that's why it doesn't do a good job. It's at separating healthy from unhealthy.
right. So I mean, I'll try to give this debate short and accessible treatment. So long story short, Nova, even though it's often capitalized as Nova, it's not actually an acronym. It's just the Portuguese word for new, as in new classification. It's a classification that came out of a bunch of public health academics in Brazil trying to create an epidemiological schema to map dietary patterns and to match negative health effects to particular dietary patterns, right? So if you sort of said that if a given population eats X percent of a certain type of food, like an ultra processed food, that you could then correlate that with negative health outcomes. So it's meant to be a sort of population level epidemiological schema. But what's happened is because the schema itself describes foods, right? So it's these sort of four categories of foods going from unprocessed to most processed. A number of people, including unfortunately the very authors of the initial schema that said this is not what it was for, have started applying it to individual foods. And so they've created this association basically saying that ultra processed foods are bad. They're bad as sort of key components of food environments, but they're also bad as individual foods, which creates a lot of confusion and ignores basic things like the nutritional properties of the individual foods you're talking about, right? And this sort of slippage has created all kinds of problems because it leads to people being able to say something that, like, for instance, an Impossible or Beyond Burger is unhealthy because it's processed, when we actually know that that's absolutely not the case. In fact, we've got peer-reviewed studies showing that Impossible Burgers or other soy-based meat analogs are actually far more heart healthy than the quote-unquote unprocessed red meat that they're meant to replace. So as we get into in the book, the category as a whole is not really useful, and it's especially not useful the way it's been pulled into mainstream food discussions, which basically wields it as this cudgel, as this synonym for all things bad. And we get into this much more. I got to plug the book. We get into this in depth in the fourth chapter of the book.
Plug away. That's what you're here for. Oh, I want people to read the book.
We did a fun, well, I don't know how fun it was for me, but we did a fun food autoethnography experiment where I ate a 100% ultra processed diet for a month, which was Huel. I just ate a month's worth of Huel.
Yeah, I saw you mention that. I'm not familiar with what Huel is,
Oh,
but
I am, yeah.
it's like one of those food programs, and you buy the packaged food and eat it.
It's so it's prepackaged and it's designed to be nutritionally complete. Every serving essentially has roughly the same sort of nutritional profile, including calories, and so it's supposed to be in some senses like a meal replacement thing. Like I don't like the people at Huel are not saying everyone that someone should go on an all Huel diet. I mean, maybe they are. I haven't heard them say it. I don't think that would be very good marketing. But we decided that because it was an ultra processed food that's primarily made from like pea protein, right? And pea protein is very, very nutritious, very healthy. That it would be interesting to sort of like do this the sort of like food experiment that you read about frequently in different books, and was dramatized most famously in Supersize Me, the
Right.
the documentary where he does it with McDonald's. I won't say that it was like gustatorially particularly, like I wouldn't recommend it in terms of it being a dining experience, but it wasn't like threatening to my health in any way.
Yeah. And I think you made the point too, to be fair to Huel, that at first it was good, and then after a while it was like, hey, this again.
To be honest, there are actually Huel products that are still in my diet, despite the fact that by the end of the month I was like, I don't want to see any of this stuff again. But I use them I use them sparingly and for particular purposes and stuff like that. But no, it wasn't bad. I'm just the kind of person where if I had to eat the same thing at every meal every day for a month, it would become pretty unpleasant. And I think that's most people, but some people want to eat chicken breasts and broccoli at every meal. That's I don't want that either, but
no, that's what the Secretary of Agriculture wants us to eat, so we save a lot of money. So you get to have a tortilla with it.
Yeah, for $3 allegedly.
Right.
Yeah. No, but sorry, but the point of this experiment, which I think Gabe is burying as he reflects on only having to have this sort of pea slop, is that people sort of say, ultra processed foods are so bad. Famously in his book Ultra Processed People, Chris Van Tulken tries to go on a 30-day ultra processed diet, and he sort of can't make it because he's eating all these sort of pre-made lasagnas and breakfast cereals and drinking Diet Coke, and he gains weight and he freaks out. He can't even make it 30 days. The point being that existing in this ultra processed food environment is just such a nightmare. And we thought, well, yeah, because you're eating junk. You don't need
It's not the same. Ultra processed is not being junk.
Exactly. Like you don't need this new classificatory schema to make this point. If you're going to eat a lot of junk, if you eat junk for 30 days, you're going to feel ill. But what if we took actually scientifically, nutritionally perfected, or at least formulated to be as perfect as possible meal replacements that are clearly ultra processed, and we eat only that, but we're not eating junk. We're eating things that are actually designed to be nutritionally optimized. And Gabe did blood work, he weighed himself, he stayed on his normal exercise schedule, and nothing changed. He did not feel ill, he did not gain weight, he didn't develop other symptoms. Why? Because he was eating food that was actually nutritionally fine, which sort of gives the lie to the entire ultra processed schema. And so I think one of the things is that we're trying to get across in the book is that we need to get away from these shorthands that have this element of truthiness, right? Like it seems right. Michael Pollan says eat real food, don't eat food like substances, but it's quite simply not the case.
Yeah.
Right? It's too simple.
This is so important. It is so important. This just is not in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, well, and sorry. So I know that I'm cutting people off here, but I want to pull this back to the central point. But the point is, because people don't understand it this way, the critique of, going back to your initial question, the critique of plant-based meat analogs that has been most effective, right? Because you can't say that they're worse for the environment because we've got reams of peer-reviewed studies, that show that they're actually far better for the environment. You can't say they're
And they're also
worse.
delicious. You
Exactly,
can't say they're
you
not good.
Exactly. And I think there has actually been this sort of narrative that actually they're not that good. I think a lot of them are actually perfectly good, right? Like the Cornell University Tasting Lab, as we write about in the book, has done blind taste tests with Impossible Burgers and beef, featuring no vegans, only meat eaters who can't differentiate the two or who even prefer the Impossible Burger. But I think we basically need to put the ultra processed thing out to pasture, if you will, and really focus on the nutritional properties of foods rather than this broad category. And I think, introducing something like in Europe, they've got the Nutri-Score labeling, which is a product by product sort of nutritional score rather than a broad category. And on Nutri-Score, sort of vegan plant-based alternatives, they do quite well. They get like a solid B rating for nutrition, and that's great. If you really want a burger, then it's totally fine for you to have Impossible Burgers.